All right, good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to call the January 13th Internal Services Committee meeting to order. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Please rise.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, next is the adoption of the agenda. Motion from Commissioner Brown, support from Commissioner Drollet. Please vote. Motion passes 11-0. Next is the approval of minutes dated December 9th, 2019. Motion to approve. Motion from Commissioner Haas, support from Commissioner Sauger. Please vote. Motion passes 11-0. Next, public participation. Anybody from the public wishing to speak? Seeing no one from the public, they're saving their energy for Wednesday. We will close public participation. Next, we will move on to item number 6, election of officers. We will start with vice chair position. I will start by taking nominations. Commissioner Sauger.
I would love to support Jim Carabelli for re-election.
Second.
Commissioner Sauger, supported by Commissioner Drollet. Are there any other nominations for vice chair?
Nominations be closed.
Nominations are, motion to be closed, second from, I think that was Commissioner Duge. And we will do a motion to approve Vice Chair Carabelli. No, we're gonna vote. Everybody vote.
I want to be the last one to congratulate you.
Motion passes 11-0. Congratulations, Commissioner Carabelli.
Should you have it any better than the rest?
Next up, item 6B, Sergeant at Arms for a one-year term.
Nominate Leon Drollet because he's closest to the door.
Second.
I nominate Elizabeth Lucido.
I support.
Hold on a second.
Not accept the nomination.
Right, Commissioner Drollet, do you accept the?
Does it come with a gun?
That's how
Ask for a model.
I hate to put a gun in your hand. He'll kill himself for sure.
Commissioner Drollet declines. We had a motion and support for Commissioner Lucido. Chair Smith.
I can speak to Commissioner Lucido, who has put it in writing to me, at least through electronic writing, that she would accept that if she was nominated.
Nice job, man.
Are there any other deputy sergeant? Any other nominations? All right, seeing none, we will close nominations for Sergeant at Arms, and we will vote for Commissioner Lucido.
We'll put a vice sergeant at arms, like a vice chair.
Sergeant of Vice.
Motion passes 11-0. Commissioner Lucido is the Sergeant at Arms for another year. All right, next is item 7A, Department Recommendations, Agreements, Information Technology, Maintenance Agreements for First Quarter 2020 Package 3 in the amount of $180,616.05. Motion to approve from Commissioner Duge, support from Commissioner Brown. Take her away, Jaco.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Happy New Year. This one is just an additional 2 items for first quarter of this year, maintenance items. BSNA software is used in the Treasurer Department. That's their main case management system. And then the other one, Mitchell and McCormack, is used in the Health Department as their main case management system. So those are the two systems that we're asking for approval for.
Thank you, Jaco. Any questions? I don't see any on my list, so we have a motion and support. Please vote.
God bless you.
Bless you.
You just got robbed.
Motion passes 11-0. Thank you, Jaco. Next up is item 7B, postponed from November 7th, 2019, full board budget amendment for capital improvement fund for comprehensive facilities management program in the amount of $139,761. I'll take a motion to approve. Motion from Commissioner Sauger, support from Commissioner Duge. Lynn, go ahead.
I believe you recall that in November, the purchasing department, or I presented an item, and the purchasing department had solicited requests for qualifications for a comprehensive facilities management program. On September 24th, one response was received from ARC Document Solutions. A comprehensive facilities management program addresses three components, and that's buildings, equipment, and also emergency. What ARC Technology would actually do, they would gather all paper documents and anything in digital format. They would organize it, they would scan it, organize it, and create folders and subfolders. What ARC Technology does, it recognizes construction documents. So it makes the documents readable. When they're readable, they become searchable, and we can access them from any mobile device. The building module actually takes our as-built construction drawings, so the mechanical, electrical, architectural, civil drawings. And it will also color code and use a layering system that it would have any of the renovations that have taken place over the years in the different areas of the building. It would also, there's also a equipment module, and that would visually identify the equipment on the drawings. For instance, the boiler refrigeration personnel, they could be up on the roof, and they want to clarify what areas that unit serves. They can bring that information up. They can check the zones and that kind of information. It will give the manufacturer model number, serial number of the equipment. It would have maintenance manuals in it, any maintenance history, inspection reports. It will also can include a parts listing, and that they can easily order any parts that are necessary right from their mobile device. The emergency model will have evacuation routes. It will have emergency shutoffs. It will have shutoffs for water, electricity, natural gas throughout the building. It'll contain material safety data sheets. It will have the evacuation routes, the fire system and the sprinkler system information, all readily available. It will have the underground utilities information. It'll have emergency contact numbers. It'll have training manuals in it or any videos, and also any action plans. When all these documents are scanned and organized and they create folders and subfolders, they'll create a dashboard for each building. So they can simply bring up the administration building. If they need information on the electrical, like a transformer in the building, they can trace lines when they're out on the job. We believe they'll be more productive. It'll also help in the bidding of services, and we also are trying to capture a lot of institutional knowledge that is quickly going out the door.
Thank you, Lynn. Commissioner Drollet.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Lynn, for bringing this item back before us. As if I recall correctly, the last time this was originally brought up, there were questions about how the benefits of this particular system are currently being administered. In other words, how do we currently deal with an emergency? How do we currently deal with those things? And if I recall, you mentioned that it's currently being done through use of a significant amount of staff time. If somebody needs to know something, they may have to go dig up
Yes.
an old, blueprint or whatever it might be and spend an inordinate amount of time. And so the question that I had back then, and I guess I still what I don't know is, if we spend over $500,000 on this system, and that frees up the staff time, what is it going to be significant enough to have an impact on our staffing needs? In other words, is there going to be a vacancy in the future we may not have to fill as a result of that? Or what might be the impact of our staffing needs on your department as a result of the efficiencies that this would bring?
I would love to be able to tell you that we could decrease personnel. I don't see it at this point, maybe in the future, but the buildings are aging. We believe that we'll be more productive and have more productive time. You don't know how often, like, we had to look up the windows in the county building that were installed in the 70s. So what color was the tinting of those windows? So it's information like that. If we can have it readily accessible, we can be more productive.
Yeah, I would imagine it would increase efficiency
Yes.
substantially, but one would hope that when one increases efficiency substantially, there's an offsetting benefit. So, you're no longer having to look up the window tint color. That frees your folks up to do something else that may be now that they can get to, that they otherwise wouldn't be able to get to.
Yes.
I guess I'm looking for what are the benefits of these efficiencies? If it's not going to be that we can do it with fewer people, can we do more than that we currently
Yes.
are doing? And
Yes.
what would those more things be?
Yes, our trades personnel and boiler refrigeration personnel utilize a work order system. We have a significant amount of work orders coming in daily. We believe we'll be able to address those quicker, more efficiently. We'll be able to communicate the information, like if we need to use purchasing, and they would have all the information at their fingertips so that they can order certain things if it requires their input. We want to get into the generation of technology. We're actually flooding in paper. If you ever came to our office, we'd be more than happy to show it all to you. But we also want to capture the institutional knowledge. Because just because it says something on a drawing doesn't always mean that that drawing is correct. So we're trying to input that information before these individuals leave employment.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Chair Smith.
Hi, Lynn. I have two questions. One, we left last year talking about the possibility, or you were going to check on the possibility of any internal county department being able to take on any part of this, because it sounded like we had some similar partial systems in place that might be able to overlap with what we're looking for here and maybe save us some money and do some things internally. I know planning was one of them that was at least a consideration. Can you tell me where we got with that?
I don't think I have to say to anyone that I am not technology savvy. I think everybody knows that. I had Ben Truppa from our office talk to Public Works regarding the next gen system. And it's my understanding they do a lot of aerial mapping, or they're dealing with sites, so they're able to plot their drains and their equipment. It does not appear that they have anything that's for construction. The ARC technology actually recognizes and reads construction symbols off drawings. Now, the next gen does have a work order component to it, but we already have a work order system. We're just trying to tie the information to become more accessible so that when they have the work orders, they can complete the work assignment.
No, I don't remember exactly. I did hear something about the possibility of Public Works, but I also heard some conversation, and I know that it was from a 20,000-foot view, but from planning, that they had some things going on, and I don't know, thank you. Jaco's going to come up and kind of talk to that. So I'm sure somebody has at least talked to them and reached out to them. I just want to make sure that that's one of the things that we looked at and how that came out.
Yeah, I think the way, to listen to how Lynn described this in the beginning of what this program actually do. There's quite a bit of intelligence behind the program as far as construction is concerned. Now, in planning, they have a program called GIS or ESRI, which is a very large system, which basically started with mapping, and the company's whole goal in the beginning was just about mapping. They did a lot of other things after that, but with GIS, it's really the same thing. If you want to locate something or put something in a specific location, you can map it and show where the exact, like it's in this building, and it's in this particular building and whatever system it is.
Which actually takes some of what you said out of it. That's where so the FDC connections and the boilers and where they're all located. So that's where that seemed like it tied in. So go ahead.
But I don't think when you look at Esri and you start using that to do this, you have to put many different layers, and I'm talking different applications and coding on top of that to get to that point. Lynn specifically talked, for instance, about knowing the water shutoffs, all the emergency stuff, and those type of things. Esri doesn't provide you the mapping capability. Take this building and say on the 6th floor you have this. In this specific location you have that is something that you have to build out. It takes a significant amount of manpower to be able to do that kind of thing. In other words, what I'm saying is the intelligence behind the program is specifically designed for construction environment. That's the difference between the two. And when you start going down that road, it's almost like reinventing the wheel. I'm not saying that it cannot be done. What I mean by that is that these people, what they focus on is specifically construction, management of construction systems, and their workflows and everything that you do from there is focused around that. So for you now to go and do this on a different platform is going to take a very significant amount of work and coding.
So my question to that, though, is it may take a significant amount of work, but then we own it. And my big problem is how many times we're, and I don't mean in this situation, because I'm just throwing this out here, but like we go out and we lease something that's going to be taken care of for a long term, and we get it for cheaper up front, but in the long run, we don't own it. And if we decide we have to do something different, if times get bad, and we have to cut the maintenance fees and the licensing fees, and then we're without it again. So you say it might take a significant amount of manpower. So I don't know what that means. It might mean that it's not doable, but my thought is that it may be worth the significant amount of manpower to do now, or maybe and this is another question I was going to ask you, can we buy the system? Will it cost more, but can we own the system at the end of the day ever, instead of leasing it for the rest of our life and kind of because once everything's in place, that fire department connection, the boilers, they're never moving, right? They might get a new one, but it's not at such a pace that inputting new things is going to be out of control. That's something that someone in the office could do, right, if we owned the system. So afterward, we're not talking about, I understand the whole setup of it is probably an immense operation. But once everything is set, when we change a boiler, we change the boiler in the system. If we change a window, we change the window in the system. It's never going to need a whole reset again. So my first question is, have we looked into how much it would take to actually do it in-house or the manpower? And the second question would be, is there, if that's not doable, I mean, and you know it better than we know it, is it a possibility, or have we ever looked into a situation like this where we would look to pay a little more upfront but own it for the long run? And that's the second one's for you, Lynn.
If I just can say one or two things about that, and I'm not saying it's not doable. What I'm saying is, in today's environment, if you look at the software companies, the way that it's structured, and everybody is going there, is that, you know, this concept that you talk about, putting it out somewhere in the cloud or kind of leasing, as you mentioned, that concept of paying an annual amount to a company, you still own the data. You need to make sure, obviously, that contract-wise those things are taken care of. But at the end of the day, you know, everything that's put into that system still belongs to you. It's just the software itself that does not belong to you. It's like how, you know, you maybe lease the software. Microsoft, that's how their licensing worked today. You know, in the old days, you would get the system and install it on your computer. Now you buy the software and you pay an annual payment. You know, and once you stop paying, you don't have the software anymore. It's done, so you cannot use it anymore. So I just want to mention that. So that's a big challenge, and most of the software companies are going in that direction because it solves a lot of problems for them, and one of them is licensing issues.
So this is the difference of this. So I mean, like software and computers, I mean, I understand we have to do this with the computers because every couple of years they're new and they're out of date. But when you get a system of a mapping and technological system that just basically shows buildings in place and layered and everything, that really doesn't change. As long as you can access it, that doesn't change. That's that's the reason I just want to know why we can't develop this, pay for someone to develop it, and then own it. I mean, so that's, I know that maybe it's way too simple of a question.
You're 100% right in saying, you know, that doesn't change. The data doesn't change. But how you present that or installing it on a system, that system that you do, whether you use that system or a different system, that system changes all the time.
That's where it's above my
And
my
that is
level
the
here,
difficulty, because your data today sits on the system, and tomorrow they change the program, or Microsoft, which is not even part of this, changed their program, and this program has to adapt to Microsoft because of some, you know, what do you call it? You know, some part of that system that changed, and now they have to make an architectural change to their program so that it works with Microsoft. So they make that change. If you don't have that ability to do it on a system like that, you yourself will have to make that change so that then it works with Microsoft. Or
That's where you come
whatever.
in.
That's where I come in, but that is a decision that you have to make, whether you're a development shop or whether you are a COTS off the shelf, is what we call it, shop. And the difficulty there become resources. You know, the more you start developing, the more resources you need, and that becomes very, very cumbersome. The challenge is not so much in developing the systems, the challenge is in maintaining the systems after they've been developed.
So let me ask this question then. You see what a lot of the commissioners have talked about with licensing and maintenance fees over the years, right? I mean, they just seem to be coming to us in a bigger and bigger number all the time because that's the way it's going, right? But so what do you do on your side of things to keep a handle on that? Because we can't just keep adding and adding and adding licensing fees, because pretty soon, we all know sooner or later something's going to happen to the economy, right?
Yeah.
So those are things that I just want to make sure from our perspective that when you take in a project like Lynn's or someone from treasurer or someone from clerks, or, you know, that you're saying, I think it's better to not do this because we have, you know, we're going crazy with licensing fees and we can do it this way. So do you look at these in that critical way of trying to limit our licensing fees for the future?
Yeah, absolutely. I actually, had a meeting with Commissioner Dorley not too long ago.
Sorry.
And I sat down, we had a very good discussion, and I asked him at the end of the meeting, I said, what can I do for you that's going to help, making things better from that standpoint, financial standpoint? Because I know, that's always a big concern. And he had a very good suggestion, and that was that every time I save money in any transaction that I do, I need to record that, and I need to, talk to the board about those examples where we save money. And I can tell you that this is constantly going on all the time. Every single maintenance item that I bring before you, I bring that before you after I've vetted with that company, even if we've had that company for 10 years. Every single time we talk to the company and say, can you cut us some slack? Why, they put a 5% raise on the contract, inflation is not 5%, why did you do that? Can we do 3%? We do that every single time. Recently, one of my employees, Steve Yelich, was over at Juvenile Justice Center. There's a program there that we use. We've been paying maintenance for them for quite a few years. And Steve realized that the amount of license that we use came down, and we went into the program as the company, what can we do to reduce the cost here? Because we're not happy with the way that this is done currently. We were able to reduce the cost on a $29,000 item to $7,000 moving forward. So what I'm saying is that this is constantly going on. I mean, you see the big numbers coming from me, but I can assure you that before I go to my boss and before I come to the board, we do our due diligence to keep costs down as far as it's possible in our.
All right. Thank you, Jacob. Thanks, Lynn.
Commissioner Carabelli.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Jacob, I looked at this. I've talked to other department heads about the possibility of doing stuff, and I understand the reasons why on all the different layers wouldn't be there from work orders, so forth and so on. My biggest concern was, though, is the way I read it the first time is that all the inputting being done by this company is theirs, and at the end of it, we don't get that. Is that your understanding? Because that's where, if we have all these paper copies and they're going to load them all up into the system and we cut ties to go with another company, all that stuff is gobbledygook. We can't utilize it to go to another platform, if so choose to, in 8 years, hypothetically. What do we do in the meantime now? Because we're going to be locked forever, the way I read it, and I could be 100% wrong. So I would strongly suggest if you get the opportunity, take a look at that, and that's a real serious concern, because Lynn's going to have all this stuff and all the paper documents, and then all of a sudden it's all uploaded. Well, what are we going to do with the documents? Some of them you'll probably keep, but it's all electronic now. Well, if they're the owners of it, we're locked in bed forever.
Yeah.
And that's my biggest concern with this.
Yeah, I will look at that. I am not familiar with exactly how the contract reads, but usually how the contracts work, because of the cloud today, as you can imagine, everything is like that. Everything has that component to it. The data always belong to the, to the owner, to the people that put this in. What they can do is they can say, I will provide your data for you in this format. And it's a flat file format. And what I mean by that,
Whatever it is, as long as you're
as long as we get the data back, then we know what to do with that to make it in some
That was
sensible
my major concern in
format.
that, so if,
And I will work with Lynn on that.
Okay, thank
to
you.
make sure that
Thank
is
you,
the
Mr. Chair.
case.
Thank you. Commissioner Leonetti.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Happy New Year. Good to see you. This is tough, and I know you're aware of it. Lynn, you might not be aware of it, but we had a lot of budget meetings like prior to our regular meetings. And one thing that was apparent, was a lot of this was touched on by Chairman Smith and the other commissioners, is we spend an awful amount on these maintenance fees. I mean, it's not Jacob's fault. It's just the way, as he said, the business is going. And I mean, it is like getting near the tens of millions of dollars. I mean, it's expensive. And it's almost like we would be better off going back to a file cabinet system, because what we've done is we've really created a whole nother level of security that we have to have by being electronic and everything. And there's many benefits to it, but there's excessively high costs. Now, in dealing with this last year, I kind of came up with a test in my own mind. And the test was, if we can go to some type of an electronic service like this, and it benefits the public. So, for example, it's easy now for the public to take a look and see their recorded deed online. Okay, it's a service that we have. Or there's e-filing in the legal profession. But there are, and Public Works has some new like computer systems that allow developers to get their documents in quick. But there can be service fees passed on to the public for that benefit. And so as the cost of that maintenance goes up, for better or worse, we can also increase the service fees. But the public is generally benefiting from that expedited, ability to do transactions. This is something internal. You would agree, right, that this program that you're looking for is an internal program for us operating amongst ourselves and benefiting ourselves as opposed to generally benefiting the public. Now, you could say, well, if the buildings are up to snuff, then we're benefiting the public. But there's really no way we'll ever be able to pass on this fee to anybody else. It's our own internal system now. And so I'm having a hard time with that, because I think if we come in here and we can demonstrate that the public can benefit from this, and that ultimately maybe we can even put a service fee on it for that benefit, then I feel comfortable about these increasing maintenance fees. But when it's something that deals with our own way of doing things, there may be, as many different people have said, there may be a different way of doing it, as Bob was suggesting, some other way of doing it. And I guess my ultimate question to you, Lynn, and I guess you wouldn't be here, I think I know what the answer is, but I'm going to ask you, do you really think this is a need or a want? I guess that's my question.
I think you have to plan for the future. I mean, people look at us funny, contractors look at us funny, architects, when, we're going over to a machine, a blueprint machine, and making copies. It's just not the way people do business any longer, unfortunately.
I get that. It's just that it's so expensive, and there's so many of these maintenance fees that just keep incurring, and I don't know when it's ever going to end. And like Chairman Smith said, if the economy goes south, then we're going to have to take a look at all these things and systematically decide which ones to cut. And I'm concerned with what Chairman Carabelli said. Now, if we cut this one here and we're left with this flat data, everything we put in up front was wasted. So I'm having a hard time with this one. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Drollet on the second round.
Thank you for recognizing the second round. Lynn, I'm going to ask you a question that's probably too simplistic, but this amount, about $600,000, is about $120,000 a year over the course of the contract. Would you rather have us purchase this system and pay $120,000 a year, or do you rather have us give you $120,000 to hire somebody to do additional work in the office? Because we can get maybe two people for $120,000 a year, depending on benefit costs and so forth.
I think we need to get in the electronic age, to be honest. I mean, we're getting things in format that we can't deal with because we're so reliant upon paper documents. I tend to not be a fan of technology. I got to be honest about that. And but that is the future. And I think we need to capture the information. I think we need to have the information. It isn't like they're just going to input the information and it's a one-shot deal. We're going to continuously add information, all the information on the equipment. I come to you with the capital plan saying, gee, we need to replace this piece of equipment. It's beyond its useful service life. I want to be able to give more information. I want to be able to supply you with the maintenance history and why we think it needs to be replaced. I want to have the ability to do that. Yes, we have it on work orders. Yes, we have it when contractors come in, but we'd have to go through files and try and piece it up with that particular piece of equipment.
Okay, because this is at a cost of 1 to 2 people a year, and you're saying that the product that it provides is something that we really almost can't do with people in a traditional way.
Yeah, you're using the software and the knowledge of the software to be able to read the documents. So this information comes out because they're organizing it.
Okay. Okay. Thank you very much, Lynn. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioners. Seeing no other questions or comments, please vote. We're voting to move it to full board, correct? Yes. 25 minutes ago. That's
I don't remember any further back than that.
Motion passes 10-1 with Commissioner Leonetti voting no. Next is item 7C, postponed from November 7th, 2019 full board meeting, an agreement with ARC Document Solutions LLC for Comprehensive Facilities Management Program in the amount of $596,841. Take a motion to move to full board for approval. Motion from Commissioner Duge. Support from Commissioner Brown. Nothing else to add, Lynn? Seeing no.
I'm never going to bring technology before you.
This is why I appreciate having you and Jaco here at the same time. Please vote. Motion passes 10-1 with Commissioner Leonetti voting no. Thank you, Lynn. Next, we have item 8, new business. Any commissioners with new business? Commissioner Myjack.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, we had a drain board meeting this morning. Veronica, Harold, and Marv were there, as well as myself. Candace talked about the Chapaton. You know, the state Eagle Department has denied the permits. The $2 million grant is somewhat in jeopardy. So I had mentioned to Candace that we'd like to support her in any way, support the Chapaton project. She does have a meeting, what was that, Harold, this Friday with some folks. So we will keep in touch with the Public Works Department, find out after that meeting what takes place, and based on that, what we can do as a board to help out that office. One final thing here was, this is very interesting, folks, is for 2019, the Chapaton had 5 events that discharged 138 million gallons, and they estimate that if that project had taken place, you know, with the allowing more of the capacity, that they would only have 1 event last year with 45 million gallons. So again, last year 5 events. Had that work been completed, they would only have 1 event. So that would be, you know, it's pretty much exactly what they said, which is it will hold 70 to 80% more water. So I just want to let you folks know. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Myjack. I know there's a couple questions. Chair Smith and then Commissioner Drollet.
Do you know why they were denied the permits? It does. I mean, was something not right on them? Was something? I mean,
I know that Harold will answer
knows.
that. I mean, there's a lot of
Okay.
politics with this.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Harold. Go ahead.
I always love that. There's a lot of politics. Harold, you talk to it.
Go for it.
It was, and Rob missed this part of the conversation because we go incrementally by district. Eagle has not denied the permits yet. What they are saying was they haven't received the permit request in a timely manner, and after we discussed, you have to have the Army Corps of Engineers come in and take a look at this project and what needs to be done as well. There's dialogue with an Eagle senior staff member who has made some, in my point of view, pretty ridiculous comments back on this subject. And that's what the meeting with him and the governor's people will be about on Friday. What we've assured Candace was, if the need be, after that meeting, we would talk about a press conference or something out at Chapaton at that time. So, and you gotta go back to the green ooze issue.
What?
That was all Eagle's fault. It was all the governor's administration. They didn't follow up on it. Well, as some new facts have come out, under the prior Attorney General, they had dismissed all of the environmental prosecutors, reassigned is a better word, all the environmental prosecutors within the AG staff. So when this ooze came out, it was the city of Madison Heights that filed for the prosecution that ultimately was turned over to the federal government. Now they're looking at Detroit and St. Clair with the same guy. What Dana Nessel has done is reinstated environmental prosecutors to deal with this issue. So although it's a non-political issue, when you start throwing the little pebbles at the windows, somebody's going to respond. So my hope, and I have talked to the governor's representative personally, is Friday they come to some type of agreement. Candace was not very encouraged that they're going to come to an agreement at this Friday's meeting, and then I think we take a look at it as a board and react accordingly. So that's as much as I know. I know less about the thing on the agenda Wednesday, though, I might add that.
Commissioner Drollet.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Commissioner Majek, for bringing this issue up. It's important, and Commissioner Hoff for giving us some information about the upcoming meeting. I would perhaps, I was alarmed when I read the article, and that was my only real source of information initially, was the Macomb Daily article, which I think was disappointing and disturbing. Would it be possible that we have Chair Smith invite Candace Miller or her staff to come before this board in the next week or two and give us an update and an appraisal of what the situation is? Because I'm interested to know, what happens as a result of Friday's meeting, where we're going with this.
If I can, Mr. Chairman, we have a public services meeting the 22nd. So we can invite the Public Works Office, Crystal, to that day, and that'd be great.
She asked though, at today's meeting, that we hold off for now. So I would rather.
Well, until Friday. She's meeting with them Friday. After Friday, she said, call us.
Well, we can ask her, and if she doesn't feel it's that time, then she doesn't, she can tell us
Keep
that.
in touch with, yeah.
Commissioner Duje.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm very pleased that somebody is actually looking at the green ooze from Macomb, from Madison Heights. They dropped the ball before. They dropped it 3 years ago. My shop's a quarter mile away from this.
Oh, it's your shop.
Go ahead. But after everything's said and done, this is very, very nasty. We were told originally that this was cleaned up. We had people running around for a year in hazmat uniforms, scaring the hell out of everybody. Who dropped the ball? Because somebody did drop the ball. I'm very happy to hear that the Attorney General is putting people back that might prosecute this. My understanding is that today that Oakland County was having something in court against electroplating services, and Gary Sayer is finally in jail in West Virginia or something. I'd be very interested to go to one of these meetings to see what, when, where, why, and how, because what occurred at electroplating services is outrageous, putting it mildly. Some of the salts and some of the stuff that the guy used, buying it was not a problem. Getting rid of it was the problem. And he was talking thousands of dollars to get rid of some of this stuff. He didn't do it. He dug a hole in his shop and dumped it all into a hole. Now, after everything's said and done, they worked on it for a year and 3 years ago. So I'd be very interested to find out who's doing what now and what the final result is going to be. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Kleinfeld, did you have anything else to add?
Yeah, there are a couple of other issues. today we paid for an odor test that Eagle is requiring $69,000. We have to pay for that, which I said, I'll go over there after a rain and tell you where the odor's coming from. But they have to not only tell where it's coming from now and catalog it and everything, but they have to run it through computer tests to say what would happen in the future, and they have to create those tests, and so there's a whole bunch there. We had to transfer the bottom lands from the state over to us today as part of this process. So as they go along, new things are popping up that Candace's office didn't have knowledge of before. It doesn't mean they didn't exist. It just means they didn't have knowledge of it. With respect to the other part, this might get very unpleasant, and it might go down a very political road, and I'm really hoping that it doesn't. So I'm hoping that they resolve it and that everybody else doesn't have to get involved in it, because that's not going to be a good situation. And I've talked to people, by the way, as Harold has, on both sides, and I've gotten different stories as to what was said and what was happening and what intentions are. So I'm kind of just taking a sit back and let Candace do her thing approach at this point. And then I just wanted to very briefly say, I just got back from Washington. I had a day of leadership training at the George Washington Institute for Leadership. I got a long way to go. And I got a book on civility, so you guys would appreciate that.
Take your mayor with you?
Thank
And
you.
then the next day we spent at the White House, and
In the White House?
well, the building where the vice president is, it's on the White House grounds.
Okay.
They pulled some of the commissioners over for a photo op with the president on the deregulations that they just announced, the environmental, it's going to go, no more 2,000-page thing. And then, but what they didn't tell us is involved in that also is that they no longer have to take climate change into account when making these decisions. Now, when they pulled commissioners in to go stand behind him, I was thinking, y'all are going to stand behind him and you don't even know what's in there. But obviously it was commissioners in leadership at NACO and Republican commissioners that went. And so if you guys saw that picture on TV, some of those people were the people that came from our meeting. But we had 3 hours of a lot of discussion with a lot of advisors to the president about all kinds of regulatory issues. So that was also very valuable. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Brown?
I've attended similar programs at the White House, and there's a lot of good information there. Those departments heads and other people that are advising him, and that's a unique outreach. That hasn't been done before, at least in my recollection, in recent times. And regardless of where you stand on the issue, these people are about getting things done for the country, and you got to work with who's there and establish good contacts. It was a good thing that you were there, and that's a kudos to us. So thank you for being out there. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Haw?
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to add that Chairman Smith and I attended the Selfridge Sustainability Study meeting. They've got a lot of things planned for Selfridge where they're trying to collect data on what communities are going to buy in, who can help them, what their plans are for the future. So I think you'd agree there's a lot more to come on that subject in the future. So heads up. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other commissioners with new business? All right, seeing none, we will close new business, move on to public participation. There is no public today. Next, I'll take a motion to adjourn. Motion from Commissioner Drollet, support from Commissioner Duje. Please vote. We are adjourned. See you all Wednesday.